Okay. Wow. Um, can I call you back in a little bit? I'm on a Zoom call with FunWare right now. Is that okay? No, I understand we need to talk about this. So anyway.
All right. Hi, everybody. Gonna give everyone a few more minutes to join us. It looks like people are still trying to get on. All right. Hi, everybody. I think we can start to get started here. For those of you that saw the email and the Facebook post that I put out a little bit earlier today, I kind of went through some of the things that we were going to hit on just to start, which included some of the updates that we've made to the program for this year. And then we reached out to AQHA and APHA about some of the things that they are seeing on show results coming in. So we're going to go over some of those topics. And then some of the things that you all have sent in when we posted the little survey asking you for feedback. We're going to touch on some of those. If there's something that you sent in that we don't touch on tonight, you're more than welcome to ask questions about it, but some of them I have added to a list that I'm going to do a separate video how-to instruction on how to do it, and then we'll open up the next meeting with specific questions that I don't answer on those how-to videos. So to get started, we're going to go over some of the changes that we've made over the last year or so that some of you may or may not be using already. If you see on my screen, I'm currently using version 8.531, which is the most current version on the website. So it's important to make sure that you all have that downloaded on your computer. For those of you that are running AQHA shows, there's a lot of changes to the RJ file creation that are going to be in that update, as well as some of the different updates that mobile services that we're going to talk about. So always want to make sure that you are going to the website. I try to do it each time before I go to a horse show. I try to check to make sure that if there's an update, I've downloaded it. We are working on a way to notify you when we have updates, but we have not gotten that done yet just because we make a lot of changes all the time. And we want to make sure that you are all getting the most robust portions. So some of the things that we've changed this year or throughout the last year, really, that we haven't necessarily pointed out to anybody is we have introduced the option for maneuver scoring on the judging tablets. There are some how-to videos on our YouTube page about that. So you guys can go watch those. And if you have questions about those and want to know more, we're working on some more documentation for those, but there is some out there. Some of the things in Horse Show for Windows, particularly that I wanted to point out, are in the people and horses screens for each person. There's a spot now for actual name on card that is going to come into the result files. Not there yet, I don't think. Kathy can correct me if I'm wrong there, but it's something that if you have someone who has a middle initial on one card but not another card, something you're going to want to keep that updated that way as we're going forward and we make that change to the roster creation. You have that there. That exists for horses and people. So you're going to want to make sure you have that. If you all can't see my screen, let me know, but I think you should be able to. At least it's telling me you can.
We can
Some of the
see
other
Christian,
things that
we can see the main screen. Have you gone into any other screens?
Yeah, I went into the people screen. Could you not see that?
No, we can see that you clicked on people, but not see the people screen itself.
Okay, let me change my sharing settings real quick.
While you're doing that, just to let people know, the online entries is connected to, and we'll talk about that a bit later, is connected to the AQHA API. So the name on card and the information that comes in from there is included, and then the eventually automatically included, and eventually all of those will be connected to, as Christian said, the files themselves that go to the national associations. Yes, Christian, we can see that now. Thank you.
Okay, so if I go into change myself, I can pull up my AQHA membership and you'll see that there's an extra name field here. Right now, if I leave that blank, it's going to ask me it's going to pre-fill it with whatever my primary name is, but like my AQHA membership has my middle initial on it. So I can put that in there. And like Kathy just said, when we get that mapping there, it'll go over to those files to help you with the name validations. But the online entries does import all that right now. And like I said earlier, it's the same process for horses and people. You'll have another name field next to each horse's association number that you can fill in and change. I know like some horses that have dual registration papers, they might spell something slightly differently with one and not the other. So that's something that you want to kind of pay attention to moving forward. Some of the changes that we've made to the AQHA RJ file, some of these are from last year, some of these are from this year. We do not include the AQHA's asked us not to include scratches in the file, so those are no longer being included. For Grand and Reserve classes, we're only including the placing entry on each show number. So in the past, it would have reported, if there were 4 eligible horses, it would have reported all 4 of them. Now it's only going to report the 1 horse that places on each show number. We're also using, they had asked us to change the way we're reporting membership numbers that are not in the system. So if you have somebody that doesn't have one, it's importing with all 9s so that it can get mapped. And for those of you, this will be most important for you that are using the tablets for maneuver scoring. It's going to automatically report the result from the highest go. So for your horsemanship and equitation classes where you might have 2 goes, and if that doesn't make sense to you, I will explain it a little bit later. It'll report the highest information, which will be your final placings. We also did a correction to the setup for Grand and Reserve classes, which I will talk about that in a little bit more depth next. For those of you that have been using the score sheets even before maneuver scoring in Horse Show Windows, we've made changes to those reports to be reflective of the newest score sheets. The ranch riding score sheets in particular changed this year. They added a ranch horse appearance column and they got rid of the 10-point penalty column. And I think that's all of the major changes that we've had this year for those file creations and any major changes to the processes that are already being used. So anyone have any questions about that real quick? And if you do have a question, right now I muted all of you, so you'll have to unmute yourself if you do have a question. Or I think there's a way you can raise your hand and then I can unmute you also.
You can also type something in the chat like Christina did earlier so that we could see that question, and then we can unmute them as needed.
I didn't even see that was there. Okay. All right. So moving on. So for the AQHA Grand and Reserve classes, this has kind of been something that's been happening internally at AQHA for quite some time, but they've asked us as show secretaries to report the information in a little different manner to make it easier on them. So there are class codes for your regular Grand and Reserve, and then I am actually going to pull it up here so you can see what I'm talking about. You have your regular Grand and Reserve class code, and then for each sex division and age group, you have a class code that's specific to the performance Grand and Reserve. So all this means, and I'm going to try to explain it as simple as possible, but it might not end up being that way. So just ask questions if you need. If the horse that's placing in the Grand or Reserve class comes from the performance class, it goes into a separate class code. If the horse is placing from the yearlings, 2s, or 3s, it goes into, for the aged, it goes into the regular Grand and Reserve class code. The system will automatically push those entries into the respective class codes. So once the performance class is closed out, those entries will get pushed over to the performance class code. And when the other 4 classes are closed out, it'll push them into the regular Grand and Reserve class code. For those of you that haven't tried this, it has been working pretty well to connect those classes to run concurrently. So if you have your youth Grand Champion geldings and your youth performance Grand Champion gelding, if you connect those to be held with each other, like I have here, you really don't notice any different in your results and scoring process, whether you're using the tablets or you're manually entering those results, because they're all coming up in one class code. And then when you go into standings, you'll see them listed in their appropriate positions. AQHA does not care what card the judge fills this out on. They understand that it might be a little confusing for the judges if they have 4 different Grand and Reserve cards. Some have figured it out, some haven't, but I did get confirmation from them the other day. They really don't care which card it's filled out, as long as Grand is on Grand and Reserve is on Reserve, and the roster file comes in with the appropriate class code, that will transfer. So are there any questions on that point there? No? Okay. One other thing I wanted to add, I currently am numbering them in sequential order. Some people I've noticed are doing the Grand and Reserve, or the Performance Grand and Reserve classes as a much higher show bill number, and they're tying them together. I really don't think that part makes a difference in the process. It's whatever you're comfortable with. So going on to the next thing, this one came from APHA. APHA says that they're getting a couple of instances where they're getting the files that are generated with missing placings or too many placings. So for those of you that don't know, APHA only wants 7 placings per class, regardless of how many entries there are. So the best way to handle that, to make sure you're not reporting anything more than 7 entries, is when you're setting up your show, in each class in the Go information, you can say max entries to place down here, or max placings. You can change that to 7. Normally it'll be defaulted to 999. And then when you go into results and scoring, it will, when it asks you how many horses to place, it'll override that number, but you can set that up as you're going. So that way, if you're using the tablets or the maneuver scoring and you close out of a class, it will only report those 7 placings. The other thing that's been a helpful habit for people to get into before sending in those rosters is when you print out the information for publication report, you can skim through and make sure, I'm not going to generate the whole thing, but you can skim through and make sure you have placings for each class. If you see any zeros, you'll know that the placings for whatever reason are missing, and you can go back in to recollect those results or rekey them in. Because APHA said that they are getting some classes that the results aren't there for whatever reason. So that's kind of a good double check to get into the habit of doing with them. They also had mentioned that they wanted me to remind you guys that you can be uploading your show on their website as well, just like AQHA. The processes are very similar. If you don't know anything about that, you can definitely shoot us an email and I can give you some instructions there, but you're probably going to have to get a username and password from them in order to do that. Does anyone have any questions about that part?
Christian, I think that last year we did make a change, or sometime in the last year, we did make a change to the APHA text file that only includes up to 7. So I don't believe that you have to tell it to only place 7. I think we're just ignoring, because they don't need the entire class list, or maybe they do, I can't remember, but we made a modification to the file so that it only shows placings up to the 7 that they require.
Okay, perfect. So then that might mean that if anybody's on here that's not using a version from last year or this year, you might want to head to the website and update your version so that you get that file change. So Carmen, are you saying that you're seeing that when you generate the file to send to APHA, or when you're putting in the results and scoring? And I'm going to unmute you so you can answer that question. Maybe I'm going to unmute you.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yep, I can hear you now.
Okay. So I didn't really notice it in the DTA file, and I uploaded it, and APHA's system didn't flag it. So I didn't know it till Allison contacted me back and said, hey, there's several classes that list all of the entries as 99. All of the placings for specific classes, not all of them, just certain ones had 99. So I went back and fixed it, but I didn't know if there was something I was missing.
And when you went back and fixed it, did you fix that by entering the results again?
Actually, what I did was I went back to the results screen, and the results were there, but I hit collect results and then hit OK, and then let it, I guess, push it to,
Okay.
and that seemed to fix it. I don't know if I did something incorrectly or what.
What that sounds like, and that was actually one of the next things I was going to talk about. So great segue into that question, or to that topic. What that sounds like probably happened was your database was set up to use the tablets, and either the class didn't get closed out completely and fast enough, it either just got disabled, or if you manually entered the results and you hit manual override, and you didn't have the gray box running in the background, the utilities 5, or you didn't go into standings after collecting those results, they would not have calculated. So what I was going to talk about that was, if you have in your system preferences, this is kind of something you should really get in the habit of checking at any show. If you're using your mobile tablets and this checkbox would be checked off, that means that anytime you're putting results in the computer, regardless of whether you're physically using the tablets at that show or not, you need to have the utilities 5 option running in the background to process all those standings, because that's what tells the program to actually process that class when you click close out of it, or even calculate standings and exit in Horseshoe for Windows. And then you want to make sure you go to standings so that all those NPs show up as placings. So I would think that's what happened in that instance. But if that happens again, definitely shoot us over the database and we'll look at it. Does everyone understand what I meant with the gray box thing running in the background? You have the utilities 5, and then this will sit in the background. You would have another version of Horseshoe for Windows opened up on your computer to actually do any work on.
Correct.
One thing I want,
you.
thanks Carmen for the info. And one thing I want to note too is that if you're, as Christian said, if you're have the use tablet thing going at that point, you always want to double check that your utilities 5 is running. You can turn it off if you've left the grounds and you're no longer using it and you're continuing work at home. If you unplug it, then it goes back to the way it used to work previously. One of the things that we hear a lot is, well, I see the results, they're all right there. Christian, can you go to there's the main screen of Horseshoe for Windows in a class that exists with classes, or I'm sorry, with entries and results? Because one of the questions that we get a lot is, well, I see all the results. And what we see is the master show, which is the results with all of the judges listed. And so when you get into this screen here, and you see them all listed, a lot of people are saying, well, I can see them all here. But when you go into standings,
this column over here would all say NP.
Right. And if like under the individual judges, a lot of times the combined results are there, but the individual judges are not there, either because the entries didn't get created. Sometimes that's because the subsidiary didn't get created until after the original entries were put in, or sometimes the judge wasn't connected correctly, and so the NP is still listed there. So it's what you're seeing on the previous screen is the overall list, and then what you're seeing in this screen or in the info for pub when you're doing results by subsidiaries are the individual judges' results separated out, and that's what goes to the individual associations.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So I see that Kathy responded to Chris's comment, but she asked if the people file, I think specifically for the AQHA, but for most of them, can it accommodate 4 names like a Dr. Rachel S. Bright? And Kathy had said not yet. We are working on that. As she mentioned earlier, we do have the API connected through the online entries, and we're working on getting that into Horseshoe for Windows. Chris, you've kind of been doing this in your own way because you are able to, but what I've been doing this year for all of my results, when I do my upload for AQHA or really any association now, I've created this document and I will pull it up, and we can probably add this to our website, Kathy. It's just a list of the names that I cannot get to match after I fix them after I do the upload. You know, I might have had something spelled wrong, and then when I re-upload, it still doesn't match. But I have this list and I send it in my email with the roster file, the RJ files to them. And a lot of times what's been happening is, you know, after this middle name here, they will have an extra space that we can't see on our end. So by sending this to them, that enables them to get that cleaned up so that we don't have that problem in the future. So we can probably get this added to the website. I mean, as you can see, it's very simple, just the ID number and the name. And then I just let them know that these are the names that I cannot get to match.
Christian, this is Chris. I have been cleaning those names up since I have access. So, but what I've found is like if you could put that back up again, like that one that had the 4 names. Yeah, like that Mark R. Catafias Jr. If you go into your RJ file, you can actually fix those in your RJ file to upload correctly. Like, so you could put Mark in the first field, R in the middle field, and Catafias Jr. in the last field, and it would upload correctly. That is how I've been overriding it. But the ones with the spaces, yeah, they have to fix that on the backside.
I'm gonna try and so you're putting it in the first name, the middle name, and then the
yeah, depending on where
last name.
it is, you know, like there's one person that I have that they have 2 middle names, like they use a DW
Yes, I have
as
one
a
of
middle.
those here too.
So if you override it in this field, you can, it'll upload for you like that.
So
Exactly.
I did not override this one. So this is how it generated from the program. So the way I have that in is I have last name Catafias space junior semicolons with a space,
Yeah.
Mark space R.
I'm going to stop you
And-
real quick here, Christian. If you put a comma, so Chris, are you saying that the exhibitor last name in this case should be like this, or should the suffix have the junior in it? Because one of the changes that we did make was to make sure that anything in the field that is to the left of the semicolon, if there's a comma in it, then that goes to the suffix. So last name, comma, something what's after the comma would go in the suffix field. So
So you're
Christian, if
saying
you
I
could
should-
change, so
I
if you
should
change
enter
that,
this like this.
correct, yeah, if you put a comma there and then generate your file, it should put that junior into the suffix field. The hard part, and I've been having a lot of conversations with AQHA over the last, well, 6-8 months, really longer than that, but more specifically now that they're talking, you know, the finding of files not matching or info not matching, is these kinds of things. How in the world is the user supposed to know which field those are going into? Chris, you have a unique way because you have you help them with other data, so you have the ability. So we're trying to work with them to get that data to the user so that we can that Horseshoe for Windows can handle it properly, or at least a little bit more properly, and that B, that you guys would have that ability so that in the error message that might come back to you so that you can edit that information. What we're hoping to do on our side is when the API is connected, and the API, by the way, for those of you guys who are unaware, right now it's connected in Horseshoe Tracker. We're working to connect it to Horseshoe for Windows as well. And basically what it does is it validates the information on the an exhibitor number, a horse number, and then the class itself. Like an L1, if you were trying to put in a horse into an L1 class and they weren't eligible, it would pop back a message that said they would not be eligible for that class. So in theory, you would be able to get a lot of that information that they are saying, you know, findable offenses, if you will, would be cleaned up prior to that. Because AQHA went 2 years ago, when AQHA went to the 4, it used to have just one name. So that name on field or the name on card, we actually were using that at one point. But AQHA then changed their file format and now it's those 4 fields. So the hard part, as Chris said, is we don't always know which one is in those 4 fields. I've actually seen names where, like here, Allison Grace Bennett, Allison Grace might be her first name and Bennett her last name, and or something, or it could be Allison is her first name, Grace is her middle, Bennett is her last. It's hard to know until, because we don't get
Yeah,
that data
'cause
back from
on our
APHA yet.
on our end, all we see is just Allison Grace Bennett.
Correct.
So that's something good to know. I didn't know the thing about the comma, or if I did, I forgot about it. So that's good to know. I learned something today. But one of the other things to point out is if AQHA is really, they're not looking to fine us for things that we can't fix or that are out of our control. So I think they really have appreciated when I send them this list, you know, that, hey, I tried to get these to fix, but I couldn't. That gives them the ability to look at a smaller list of errors, and they can send that back to me and say, okay, well, this is what you need to fix. And then if it's something I can fix that I did do incorrectly on my end, I can regenerate that file and send it to them the correct way. And that helps all of us keep our data clean. But also they do realize that there are going to be some instances, especially for right now, why we're getting all these changes made, that we cannot get them to match. And they're, as long as you're letting them know and you're communicating with them, they are not going to necessarily fine you for those that, if it's something you truly cannot fix, or if it was a mistake on their end where there was 2 spaces after the middle name or something like that.
This is Pat Kress. I've seen a lot of them where some of the cards are coming through as Mrs. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so. And so, Chris, thank you for telling us about the comma. Hopefully that'll help on that one too. Thank you.
Sometimes, and Chris actually pointed this out to me a couple years ago, maybe. Sometimes they don't even know that miss is in that field. So that's another thing to add to that spreadsheet or that list that you send them is, you know, this one has a miss, and sometimes they can take that miss out or put it into the appropriate field.
They can.
So
Actually, that's in their setup in their class fields in at AQHA. And what happens is sometimes the sponsor people or the marketing people, they'll go in and they'll be generating letters, and they click those boxes to make it say, you know, dear Mr. and Mrs. or whatever, and then they don't get unchecked. So I definitely would add those on your list like you just did, and they can go back in and clean those up.
yes,
That's a good point.
Yeah, I also may have phoned a friend a few times when I was doing that horse show to get them to remove them for me. But no, that's definitely something to do, is just if you include that on there, the girls in the results department will definitely get those cleaned up so that you don't have that problem in the future, and so that nobody else has that problem as much as possible. Does anyone have any other questions around that topic there? Okay, so one of the other things that got sent in was a question about the VRH all-arounds. I don't know that I have a horse show in this, or I don't have them in this show, but the question was, when you have VRH classes at the horse show and they have all of the options where you get the separate show number and you're supposed to calculate the VRH all-around, will those VRH all-around class codes automatically get added to the horse show? Or do you have to set them up manually? So the question was, do you have to get them set up manually in the awards section? The answer to that question is no. What you have to do is in your show setup, you have to add that VRH class code into your list of your slate of classes. I can't think of one. Well, maybe I can figure one out off the top of my head. But so you have to physically find the VRH all-around class code and add it into your slate of classes. And then you'll go into standings. Nope, I can't think of it off the top of my head. You'll go into your, Kathy, do you know one of them off the top of your head?
Not off the top, but I'm looking one up.
Pat Kress here. And I will tell anybody about this. You do have to add it into your show roster as far as your class numbers or classes are concerned, and you have to run it just like you do your Grand and Reserve.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying is if I can get a class code, I'll show everybody how, but yeah, so you have to add it into your list of classes so that it includes it on the roster. It's not like your regular horse show all around that you give out at the horse show or your high point that you figure out. It's actually calculated differently with a different point scale that's built into that code, and checks the eligibility requirements of showing in a cattle class, showing in conformation, and whatnot. I might have a,
Oh, and I'm not muted now. No, I'm not muted. Okay, 210200 is a
okay, so that's the
Versatilization.
amateur VRH all around class code. So you're going to add it in, and you're going to also include that in your subsidiaries because it's going to get calculated based on each individual judge, not the master show. You don't have to do anything else with it. But when you go into results and scoring for that class, it's going to calculate the results like this. And it's going to tell you that the results have been imported, select standings to view. So you're going to hit select class again. And then I always hit recalculate just to make sure everything finished processing. And then after it's done, you click standings and it'll look very similar to any other screen. So this horse show actually did have VRH classes, but it didn't have the cattle option. So technically no one's eligible for the all around. But what it would do is it scratches all the horses that are not eligible, but the horses that are eligible in place will have placings here. So somebody that showed in a cattle class and the confirmation will be eligible and it'll place. And if you print the standings, well, because there's no eligible horses, it's not going to print, but it will list you on the bottom, the pencil points as they're called for each of those different horses that are eligible. Does anyone have any questions about, oh, I see maybe one. Oh, okay, got it. Anyone have any other questions about that? So some of the other questions that were submitted were, a couple of them were about general setup of the horse show in the system. So what I'm going to work on is getting a video of how to set up a typical, I say typical with quotes around it, horse show in the software with multiple judges, concurrent classes, and things like that, and also what to pay attention to if you're using the mobile features such as the online entries and the tablets and horse show tracker. That way that information is getting pushed up there correctly. And I'll also show, there were a couple of questions on how to get information to the tracker. So I will also include that in that video. And then I figured that the next time we do one of these roundtables, which we're going to try to do once a month, we'll start with questions about that video that I post. So does anyone have any other questions that they either came up today or they didn't submit when they filled out their form, or maybe you're on this call tonight and you did not submit a question? Or if you have anything that you want to ask that you think might not be able to get covered tonight, but you want to get covered in the future, throw it at us and I'll take notes.
This is Carmen again, and I have another question for you. I've set up a show and I have one class that does not appear in the show setup screen. But if I go to make an entry in it, it shows up. And if I print judges cards, it shows up.
So you're saying that it doesn't show up in the show information screen here? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so I've seen that happen a couple times, and normally when that happens, and I'm not sure, Kathy might know why it happens. I haven't asked her in a while. Sometimes we're going so fast when we're building the classes into the horse show. If we hit a button incorrectly, instead of pressing OK, we hit cancel or something, but it still created the go for that class. I've seen it get stuck. So what you'll see happen is you'll get an error message if I noticed that class number 4 wasn't here and I went back to add it in the instance that Carmen's talking about, it will say the class already exists, but you sit here, you're staring at it and I'm like, I can't see it. It's because the Go got added. And so what we need to do is delete that Go of that class. And that's something that's probably best for you to have to either call the support number, text the support number, or email the support email. And we can either log in through TeamViewer and get that extra Go deleted from the back end, because it's not really something that you can do through Horseshoe for Windows. It's something that we'll have to do in Access, and definitely not something that you guys would want to play around with, but we can get that done and then add that class for you. But that would make sense why it's able to do the entries and it's able to print the judge's card, because the Go technically exists, but the class itself doesn't. Hopefully I explained that correctly.
Okay, I thought now I must be losing it because I can't find it. I couldn't find the class code. I couldn't find anything on the information screen. And so, okay, I'll contact y'all later and see if y'all can fix that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you that don't know, the 877 number is the best way to get a hold of any of us, because multiple of us check that number. Normally the best way is to shoot us a text. That way whoever's available can reach out to you and give you a call. If you can tell us what the issue is in that text or in that email, that's usually helpful, because if it's something that maybe I don't know how to fix at the moment, I can get that information before trying to help you. But definitely use that. For those of you that don't know what that 877 number is, it should be, if you double click on your Horseshoe for Windows screen, it's right here. Here's the 2 contact numbers that you want to reach out to us at. So the 877-464-8282, and then the email address. Multiple of us check that. So we'll be able to get you help as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
And then I saw Christina was raising a hand, but I think she's unmuted. So did you have a question, Christina?
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to do this when you do the initial show setup webinars the videos like you were talking about. With Pinto and then now with APHA, they're doing that national dollar per judge per class fee. What is the best way to add that in? Because with Pinto, I do that, and it when I print out the statement, it does the results twice, like once for the class fee and once for the national.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if there's a way that, yeah.
You were actually the first person to register for the seminars, and that was the first question that was submitted. And I did take notes on that, and Kathy and I and everybody have been talking about the best way to handle that, because that is how it currently is. So the way you're doing it is the right way to do it, adding that as a separate fee. So like at this show that I have up as an example, you'll see on my fees, I have a class fee and a trail warm-up fee. So right now, for that class, it's going to print twice. It's going to print the class fee and it's going to print the trail warm-up fee. But we did make a note to look into maybe to only listing it once, or how best to report that information, because it is confusing. And it does make those statements really long.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure I was doing it right, or there wasn't a more simple way of doing it.
You're doing it right. And we're talking about the best way to handle that moving forward, since it's more of an issue now with those 2 associations charging a separate fee on a class level.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much.
No problem. Does anybody else have any questions? So we wanted to kind of ask everyone, those of you that are on the call, we wanted to know who is using the tracker, who's using online entries in the tablets, and if you're not using them, is there a specific reason why you're not using them, or what can we do to help you use them and get that set up? There are different options on using them. You can use some pieces and not all. You can use all of them. So we wanted to ask that to those of you that are on the call, specifically the online entries, especially because of that API that exists with AQHA. So if anyone has any comments on that, feel free to jump on and let us know.
I use it for the online entries and the tracker, and it works great. I highly
We'll love
recommend
to hear
it.
that.
I have not
thanks,
used the
Chris.
maneuver scoring yet. The level 1 East will be my first opportunity. Thank God I'll
Well,
have
we
Christian
are,
there.
yeah, and Chris, I will send you the links to those videos so that you can kind of see them ahead of time. And then if you have specific questions, you can let me know on them, but I'll send those to you.
I already have them. I already have them.
Oh, perfect. You're
Yeah.
on it.
And all of them have used it already. So all the scribes. So I think I'm good there.
Perfect. Yeah. Looks like Rose has a question. So
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, I did try Horse Show for Tracker last year. It was also my first year of ever using Horse Show for Windows, but we are in Canada and we couldn't get the fees to calculate in Canadian dollars like it was charging our people in US. Just wondering if there was ever any progress made on that.
Kathy, do you have a comment to that one?
It's a Stripe issue, unfortunately, and we've been trying to see if there are specific settings that you can set to charge in, that when you do a closeout that it goes in Canadian dollars. Rose, good question. Now that I have an answer, or I have a question for you, I should say. When you're keying in the information into Horse Show for Windows, is that are you putting them in Canadian dollars there?
I don't know. I think so.
Okay. Well, I mean, so your fees are set up with the Canadian amounts, and then when you're when you were hitting the closeout, it was charging it as if it was US dollars. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I had just tried it, like I just did a run through myself of $10
Right.
just to see whether it would charge in Canadian or American, and it did charge in American, so I knew that wasn't gonna fly too well with our
Right. As
people.
far as, so you can do online entries, unless you're a prepaid show for 100% prepaid show, you can certainly do online entries and just not use the closeout feature with, as far as having people charge. But I had contacted Stripe initially when you had asked that question last year, and their initial conversation was that the account that you're using had to be set up for a Canadian, which yours is, I believe, but ours, of course, is not, because we're here in the US. And so there's still some conversation back and forth as to if there's a way to for the system to know that it's Canadian versus not Canadian with both accounts. If both of our accounts were set up as Canadian, it would have done it that way, but it would not if it was because ours is the main account and it's set to US dollars. So we're trying to, I've had a couple of conversations with them, but nothing definitive has been, figured out, and that we can have our US and you can have Canadian and charge them out that way. But again, you can do the online entries, have everything, filter into Horse Show for Windows, and then do your payments however you were doing them prior to the online entries at all. We have a lot of shows that don't use the closeout feature as far as using credit cards for it. And then we have a lot of shows that do a hybrid of that.
So
Okay.
Jody asked a question. She said that she has never used the online entries, and how does it work? So Jody, I don't know if you've seen it on the Horse Show Tracker side of it. I'll pull that up really quick just so you can see it quickly. But what happens is once you build your Horse Show and Horse Show for Windows, you're able to upload it to the tracker, and then you can tell it that it's a pre-entered, or you're accepting pre-entries for the Horse Show, and then it'll get listed in the enter show section of the tracker, which looks like this. The exhibitors can then select which Horse Show they want to enter, and then they can manage their horses, manage their people, and manage their entries for that. So if they were going to enter a horse, they would select which horse they were going to enter, add their exhibitor, and then select the classes. And once they submit it to the Horse Show, it's going to require them to put a credit card on file, regardless whether it's prepaid or not. That way, if they don't come to the office and give you another form of payment, you can charge that credit card, and we'll have a Stripe connected account that can send back to you. But when you have the gray box running in the background, it'll import those entries directly into the program. So and there's actually a report that you can pull up that will print just the online entries or print all of your entries. But so like I'm running this report right now for this show I was at, and it'll have all of the online entries that came in for that horse show summarized there for me. So that's a very brief introduction. We do have I believe there's a how-to video on how to enter on the YouTube page, or maybe it's posted somewhere else, but
our goal is to have one of these Q&As be focused solely on the mobile tools, and that would include the tablets and online entries, and fast announce and some of the other things too, so that anybody who's not currently using any of the mobile tools can see how it all works and hopefully start implementing that at their shows.
That would be great.
Yes.
I tried the mobile, the units at one show, and I couldn't get the gate person or anybody to really cooperate, so it failed fast.
yeah, I've definitely heard some feedback of some of the show staff not being adaptable necessarily, or so to speak, to using the tablets. But really, once they have gotten used to it and they've used it, they do get pretty comfortable with it pretty quickly. I've had people of all age ranges using the tablets in different capacities, whether they're scribing or gatekeeping. And really, the gatekeeping is, I hate to say it's as simple as, but it's pretty similar to just picking a contact out of your phone in different steps. So, but we are definitely going to do some videos on how to do that. You know, we have the maneuver scoring video, how-to videos up there. We can definitely do some on how to use the gatekeeping feature, and how to use the more what we're calling the classic version of the ring steward portion of the tablet too.
That would be great. Thank you.
I'll tell you a story. When we, the German Quarter Horse Association and the German Painted Horse Associations were starting to use the software, and they wanted to use the tablets and tracker and all that kind of fun stuff. And they actually flew Ray and I out there, I think it's 3-4 years ago now. Anyway, the gate person, we had a big training, you know, everybody came up and we taught the scribes how to use it, and they were pleased with it. A couple of the gate people were like, this is great. One of the gatekeepers, they don't call him that there. I forgot what they call him. It's a cute little name, but he said, this is all fine and good, but I have my paper and pencil and I will not be using this. I mean, he physically said that at the meeting. And Ray went and sat with him for not even 10 minutes probably. And he tossed that paper away. And by the end of the first day, not the end of the show, and it was like a 12-day show, by the end of the first day, he ended up having 2 tablets, one which he pulled up Horse Show Tracker itself because we had the patterns listed there. And he pulled the pattern book up on the one tablet, and then the other tablet he was using to check horses in and change exhibitors and you know, add new horses and everything. So I know that sometimes you'll get a little bit of pushback, but once they start using it, it very quickly goes to you know, making life a lot easier for everybody, because you don't have to be calling the office to change exhibitors. You don't have to be verifying, you know, especially if you're going to use tablets to score or rank the classes. Obviously all the back numbers need to be in there. So a lot of times too, if your gate person is hesitant, maybe try the announcer. We've had announcers. I know Chris uses an announcer who he's got a tablet up with him, and he can do the adding and scratching and whatnot there as well. So you know, try it out on a couple of different people that you work with, and they may eventually be able to you know, nudge those who seem hesitant into, you know, eventually being able to use it.
I hope so.
I did have another question on the tracker. Our internet where our show center is terrible. So is there any way, like, I'm pretty sure you need good internet to use the tablets and stuff. I think we're maybe doomed until we get better internet.
So I'll break that down into 2 parts. So to use the tracker, yes, you need to have an internet connection. The main computer has to have an internet connection to send the data up to the cloud and get it on the tracker where the exhibitors can see it. The tablets themselves don't need access to actual internet where they can get on, you know, Google and Google anything, but they do need to be on a wireless connection that talks back to the main computer. And there's a couple different ways to get that set up. We're not the best at doing it, but we can give you some examples. I would say the best way would kind of shoot us an email with what facility you're at and how it's set up, and we might be able to ask some more pointed questions to help you figure out what pieces you would need to do that. But I would say it's not impossible. But yeah, for the tracker purpose itself, you would definitely need an internet connection.
A lot of people, we had a couple of people who had poor internet connection and they ended up purchasing a hotspot, not your phone hotspot, because obviously that gets interrupted and you want, good, consistent connection so that you don't get, behind on things. But they purchased a hotspot. It was like $20 for the month, and they used it at their show where they did not have internet access. So that's an option as well. The facilities themselves sometimes will have a way for you to connect, sometimes not. Certainly, obviously, connect with them ahead of time. Also, I'll say to put this out there that we have been working with a couple of different people on, I'm going to quote horse show in a box, unquote, but a couple of people that we know that can help kind of put your network together. They can talk to you about your facility and what you might bring. I mean, we have lots of people. Christian does this himself. Chris Darnell, I know, does this. Kathy Abel has several of them. A lot of times they are able to tap into the facilities, but sometimes you cannot. For less than probably $1,500, you can purchase all of your own equipment and have your own Wi-Fi router, a couple of access points, and just plug and play. Basically, you can just plug them in and bring them with you. And if your facility does not have the ability, or if it costs a lot of money to quote unquote rent it from your facility, because sometimes they do charge for things like that, then there are ways that we can help connect you with the right person to put something like that together for you. Carmen, your question here says, how can you get the tablet to be in number order? What tablet part are we talking about?
So, Kathy, I think what she's talking about, because I think I've talked to her a little bit about it in the past, is so when you're setting up your horse show, if your show bill isn't in numerical order, first class of the day is class 1 and the last class of the day is class 100, and the next day it's 101 to 200. The actual order in the go level of the class, which is right here, is what will fix that issue. Does that answer your question, Carmen?
Well, they are all in number order. So when you pull up the gate and even the judges' tablets, both of them, they have to search through the list, and we try to just upload sections so they don't have to search through everything, but they're not in number order when you upload them to the tablet.
So they're, as Christian said, they're not necessarily in show bill order, but they are in actual order in the go. And so they're listed by the location that you've chosen, and then the order that you're in there. It defaults generally to show bill, but if you're duplicating a show from one to another and it's pulling an old order, if you will, you may need to go in and modify that. Christian, you want to pull up the enabled tablets screen so that you can show them that you can see that information there. And we're going to try to see if we can get that a little bit easier to edit.
Okay, thank you.
The order that it goes in as you enable classes is day, and then the location, and then that actual order. So if you're enabling the entire show or just a particular day or just a particular location, then that, kind of narrows down the list of things that you're looking at. But that's how the order would go. So when they pull up a tablet, they're choosing a what's it called? They're choosing an order or a location first, the judge, the location, and then it would come up in the order itself.
And I'm pulling up the screen where you would enable the tablets, and you can use that to help you with the actual order, viewing it. I'll pull that up in a second so you can all see it, but you can filter almost the same. You can filter a little bit more than you can on the tablet, but you can filter by location and by discipline And that'll enable you to, if you see that they're out of order there, you'll be able to see the actual order and see if that's what's causing that to be different. So what I've seen a lot of times happening is people that are copying shows from, you know, one year to another, and then, you know, class number 91 changed from 91 to, you know, 94. You know, they're changing that show bill number, but they're not changing that actual order. And that is what's causing some headache in that. But like, so this horse show that I have right now, you know, 17, there's a couple concurrent classes going on here. So these are actually in the order they're supposed to be right now, with the concurrent classes mixed in between. But you can see the actual order next to them. And that should be able to help you kind of troubleshoot that issue going forward. But what I've seen a lot of, if you copy the horse show from one year to another, or even one show to another, and your show bill changes a little bit, when you just change that show bill number, you got to also change that actual order number. And the nice thing about the actual order is, you know, some of our show management or show sponsors, they decide to add classes at the last minute, right before the horse show starts. And they have to add that with, you know, show bill 1000. Well, 1000 doesn't come in between 100 and 101, but on the actual order, you can put that show bill 1000 to be 100.5, and then it will show up in the right spot on the tablet. So that actual order does allow decimal points.
The tracker also has it in that order also. So when you push your list up to the cloud, it does the same thing by day, by location, and by that actual order. So as Christian mentioned, if your show bill is a kind of out of order as far as the things go, but you need people to know that you're going to have this class in between these two, then you have the ability to edit that in there. And once you push your show to the tracker, any edits that you make to the show also get pushed. So you can be making changes after the show is already pushed, and they will eventually be updated in the cloud as well.
But try not to do a major change, because some people get really freaked out when they see it on different days, and then they call you and they call us and they say, oh my gosh, it says this is on Saturday, but on the show bill it says it's on Thursday. So definitely try to make sure that most of the dates and stuff are correct at first. And then if you know that actual order doesn't affect them too much, but the dates definitely cause a panic with the exhibitors. Does anyone else have any questions for this? And again, for those of you that didn't hear, we did record this, so we will post it online, hopefully to our YouTube page. I've never uploaded something that's an hour long, but I think it's possible. So we'll get that up there and try to summarize what we talked about on there so that everyone can see. So any other questions? Sure.
Yes, this is Allison from APHA. How is everybody?
Hi, Allison.
Hi. I posted one in the chat, and it's a situation that we have, and I apologize, I forgot that it was the Eastern Standard, and so I was living in the Central, so I'll go back and listen to this, but we have issues with some show results being uploaded with all of the class placings being 99. Did that
Yep,
get discussed tonight?
We did, and we think we answered it completely, but if it
Okay.
still becomes an issue, definitely you can let us know and let whoever the show secretary is know. But definitely feel free to copy us on it if they're using Horse Show for Windows, and we can reach out to them and connect. That way, if there's a problem that we don't know about, we can fix it going forward.
Okay, so
But
I'll
we
go
do
back and
think
I'll
we-
listen. Yeah, I'll listen
Yeah.
to the recording then and I'll hear what that is.
Yeah, and I'll send you a little summary of what that is, and you can maybe
Perfect.
include that when you send back to them.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So again, as Christian mentioned earlier, you know, feel free to toss questions either on our Facebook page or to the support@funware.com. email address. You could even text that 877-464-8282 number. We hope to, plan these once a month and be able to get more questions answered. We know there's a lot of stuff in the software. Not everybody needs it all, but not everybody realizes that there are some other cool things that they can be using. So we're trying to, be a little bit more communicative and get more info out there to people. The more people are using the software and, are talking to each other about it as well is helpful. We hope to have these Q&As focus on something specific. So we will definitely have one, like, as I said earlier, that will focus strictly on the mobile tools. And as Christian said, we're recording all of these. So we're gonna start posting them on our website so that you can go back and listen to it. And just kind of, we're trying to be a little bit more out there and available so that you guys can get all of what you need. We've put out a lot of new features in the last, 3 to 5 years, and we know that not everybody's utilizing it to the degree that they could. And so we're trying to make it easier and kind of, push all of that information out there into the world so people can, feel comfortable using it and start utilizing the extra pieces, because they've been pretty cool. The shows that are using them are finding that their shows are running quicker and things get done finished at the, earlier in the day when they're using some of the tools. Online entries, Sun Circuit, for instance, 88% of their entries came in online. So they have 13,000 exhibitors. And I think they did 36,000 AQHA entries alone. And 88% of that came in online, and their show secretaries did not have to sit there and key them all in. So there's lots of cool things that our users of Horse Show Tracker are paying attention to and utilizing as well. The maneuver scoring has been kind of cool. It's obviously newer just this year, but the users on Horse Show Tracker can see their results maneuver by maneuver after the run is completed at this point for those shows that are utilizing it. It makes things go quicker in the arena because it's, your math is done for you, basically. We had a couple of scribes tell us they were bored. We never want that, but at least we want to, yeah.
For those of you that are still looking on the screen, I just pulled that up, what they see. After the run is complete, they can see the score sheet there, or they can't see what the actual maneuver label was because the screen would be a little too crowded, but they can definitely see maneuver by maneuver and their total score. So, but yeah, definitely send us those questions as you have them, and especially if they're things that you're finding are, quote unquote issues throughout a weekend. Maybe it's something we can do a smaller little video segment on troubleshooting that specific issue. That way you can go back and look at that when it happens to kind of get through it. But yeah, definitely feel free to text us or email those questions to us at any time, or fill out that form again if it's a topic that you would think would be beneficial to doing on one of these calls. And the only other question I wanted to ask everybody was timing for these calls. I know there's only a couple of you on here right here. There's about 14 of us on here right now, but do we think that the evening is better, earlier in the day, mid-afternoon? And you don't all have to answer here, but if you want to kind of shoot back to that email I sent you earlier with the information tonight on what times and what days of the week might be better, we can kind of compile that and try to do this on a little rotating basis so everyone can have access to it live as much as possible.
Yeah, if you're having an issue, the likelihood that somebody else is having something similar is there as well. So the more, even if we only hear from, a handful of people, but we share out the information, it hopefully will help somebody else.
Christian, this is Carmen again. I do have one other question. I run Paint and Pinto concurrent a lot. Well, I run the classes concurrent. Is it better when using the tablets to run those concurrent or to run them separately so the judges have to score them separately?
So I'm not as familiar with the process of that. What I know from doing it personally in the past is that specific scenario can get kind of confusing because not everyone's Pinto, not everyone's Paint. And sometimes it gets kind of hard for the ring steward and the judge to differentiate who is just APHA, who's just Pinto, who's both. So really, I think that that's kind of one of those things you have to talk with your staff about and see what they're most comfortable with. You know, for ease of use and simplicity, it's definitely easier to run them concurrent. And what I would probably say to do, you know, is, you know, have them place the entire class and then print out the information for publication. And on those concurrent classes, have them fill out their cards off of that, because it will split out the information almost like a ladder sheet would. You know, it'll if there's only 7 APHA horses that are going to place, it'll place those 1 through 7, even if one of those was placed 8th overall with a Pinto horse in between. That would be how I would probably say to do it. But again, that's something that's going to be a little bit more specific to each of your different staff members, and kind of a learning curve there.
Okay. I know it works great running them concurrent when I manually put in results, because I've done it both ways where I've put in APHA results and Pinto results. It's definitely less time consuming to put in all of them on APHA, and it pulls all of the Pinto results. It's definitely easier for me that way. I just didn't know how that worked on the tablets.
The
On the
tablets
tablet,
themselves,
they would see exactly what you would see.
right? But what, you know, the Ray just brought up a point, and the Fast Announce has the abbreviation of which class the entries are in. You can even pull the tablet, use a tablet and pull Fast Announce. So they could, if they really need to see the two different things after they've keyed everything in and the results have gone through, then they could pull Fast Announce and see how they fill their card out. Because Fast Announce has the working, you know, it has the full working with everybody in there, but it'll have the tabs separated with just their results. So they can fill their cards out from that perspective, if that, because you can pull that from a tablet too. You can just have them have a an icon to open the Fast Announce on your tablets.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
If nobody else has any other questions, I think we'll stop this, and definitely shoot us an email with that timing and day of the week type of information, because that'll help us plan moving forward. But I even learned something tonight, so I think this was beneficial for all of us.
It was helpful for me. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for
Well,
joining
that's-
in. We hope,
that's the goal.
yeah, and as we've said before, we're hoping to do some more of these and just continue having, people along the way be able to have good understanding of how the software works. So we appreciate your participation.
This has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing and